Well, we're going to talk for about 20 minutes, and we're not going to talk about technology, even though I write about it and Jason works in the field. But we're going to talk about, I hope we're going to talk about how to build technology in a way that's relevant to real people. Those of you who read my column know I write in English, not in techno-babble, and I really don't care. I don't give a rat's ass for corporate IT directors, for techies, for hobbyists, for enthusiasts. I care about average non-techie people who aren't afraid of technology and might even enjoy it, but don't see it as the end goal in their life. They have other things in their lives, and the technology is a way for them to be entertained, to communicate with other people, to be productive, whatever. Jason, why don't you talk for a minute about your company and its philosophy, and then
Sure.
I'll hector you.
Wonderful. So 37 Signals is my company, and we build web-based software for small businesses. But we don't like to really think of it as software, because I think the software industry likes to think of software and the technology industry likes to think of technology. We just think of our products as tools to help people get things done. And the focus on our products is basically doing the simplest possible thing, which is really what solves most problems. Most people's problems are very simple problems. And then we get out of their way. And I think software, in many cases, gets in people's way too often. It makes things very difficult for people to use, very difficult to understand. And we don't think that that's what people want. We think people want very simple tools that do a few things and get out of people's way. So that's pretty much fundamentally what our products do.
And talk about, you don't have too many products, talk about what they are.
We have a total of 7, but I'll talk about our 3 main products. Basecamp is our most popular product. Basecamp, I feel like I'm not talking to people over here, but I'll kind of rotate, if that's okay with you. Is that all right? All right, so Basecamp is a web-based project management collaboration tool that's just a series of very simple tools. A message board, to-do lists, shared scheduling, who's responsible for what, ones that do, things like that, and file sharing. That's as simple as it gets. And it's for people for internal projects or for using it with clients. That's Basecamp. HighRise is our most recent product. It's a CRM tool, which I think CRM is a weird word. It's customer relationship management. We just use that because that's what kind of people sort of know, but not really. Basically, it lets you keep track of who you talked to, what you said, what they said, and what to do next. And that's pretty much what HighRise does. And then Backpack is our other product that is pretty popular. It's basically a way to keep track of, for personal use mainly, to-do lists and notes and all of life's loose ends, all these things that you normally write on a Post-it note or on a piece of paper. It lets you keep it all together online.
Now you also have an open source product whose name I've always loved, Ruby on Rails.
Ruby on Rails.
Tell people what that is.
So Ruby on Rails is what's considered a web development framework. It's basically a way for web developers or programmers to write web-based applications without having to worry about all the busy work that most people have to worry about. So it takes care of the 80% of the stuff, the minutia, the account management, the account creation, all that stuff that everyone doesn't want to deal with every time, and lets you focus on the 20% of the app that's actually unique to your application. And it's an open source thing, and it's being used by tens of thousands of developers around the world. There are many books about it now. There are lots of people using it to build their own web apps.
As Saul said, have now for 5 years with my partner Kara Swisher run this technology and media conference called AllThingsD Digital, and we are expanded onto the web this past year with a website called allthingsd.com. That's allthingsd.com. And we hired a fabulous independent design company in San Francisco called Mule Design, which I have no financial stake in, but they're terrific, and I recommend them to anyone that's building a website. And we used Basecamp to, kind of corral all the feedback on the pages they were designing, and they would post the changes there, and it worked quite well.
Oh, great! Thank you.
So, how come most of America is shackled to piece of bloated crap like Outlook.
Well, luckily, I can't take responsibility for Outlook. So, luckily. The main reason is because the software industry is structured to build crap. And I'll tell you why. This traditional software industry, so we build web-based software that's subscription-based. You pay a monthly fee to use our products. The traditional software industry is based on shipping a CD, or you can download stuff now, but every year and a half, whatever it might be. And the only way for the software industry to get more money out of you, the consumer, is to add more stuff to it, because they need to create a new version. If you have version 2, well, in order to get version 3, they need to add stuff to make it valuable, supposedly. And so now we have version 10 of things, and now version numbers are gone, so now we use years. And it's Outlook 2004 or whatever it is. And I think that's just representative of the fact that software has gotten so big and so bloated that it just doesn't work for people anymore. And what happens is that the software industry is structured to create these big bloated products because they need to get more money out of you by adding more features. What we do, and what other people like us do, is build these web-based services that aren't shipped. They aren't updated every year. They're updated maybe every couple days or every few weeks or every few months, but they're updated automatically. So you don't have to ship anything. You just pay a monthly service fee to use the products. And that allows us to focus on executing at a really high level and delivering a very consistent, good service and not delivering new software.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
You should. It's true.
No, I think you have a different model. You're right. You're not shipping in. I agree with what you said about Outlook. And by the way, I remember seeing Outlook before it was released, which is something I do in my job. I see a lot of things before they're released. And it was done by a relatively small, very smart team at Microsoft. And yes, there are small, smart teams at Microsoft. No, seriously, they have a lot of smart people who are trying to build good products, but they're in a 70,000 person behemoth, and it's very difficult to do it. And it was people forget, but it was actually a great idea. It was a combination of a PIM, personal information manager, which was a big category at the time, calendar, contacts, notes, to-dos, and email in one product. And it was really a smart idea, and it was actually very sleek and small and clever, and it just has become I think sort of a mess.
It has.
But the reason that I disagree with you is that while you may have a different delivery model, you may have a more continuous flow of updating, you're still subject to the pressure of feature creep. And that is, I've been writing about hardware, software, websites, services for 16 years. I've never yet seen a company that doesn't have that as a problem. Now, some of them deal with it better than others, and maybe you deal with it very well, but it's present. And just because you have a different delivery model and it's a service model doesn't mean you're not subject to it. And let me I want you to talk about it, but I think here's what I'd like to know. How do you balance your mantra of simplicity, which goes, by the way, beyond software? It goes to all sorts of products. Have you tried to buy a clothes dryer lately? My God, it's like a 747. Ridiculous. All you're trying to do is put hot air into wet clothes. It goes beyond software, but it's well known in software. How do you balance the demand of a self-selected vocal set of customers, and you know this, I don't care what business you're in, including the policing business, it doesn't matter. You're going to get a disproportionate amount of feedback, calls, emails, demands from a certain percentage of your customers who are enthusiastically interested in what you're doing, who want more features. How do you balance that? It's supposed to be a good principle in business to listen to your customers. With your mantra for simplicity.
I'm going to come back to the model a little bit also, because it does play a role. I agree that it's not the only reason. You have to, first of all, be a good editor. And I think software isn't well edited. So writers need editors, museums need curators, and software developers need editors too. They need to say, this doesn't fit, this doesn't work, you can do this better, you can say this in fewer words. You can say this in fewer lines of code. This interface is too complex. So you need to have someone at the top or someone who's managing a project make sure that they're a good editor. It's important to have editors in the software industry. And the software industry is missing editors. The model, though, does allow us to say no more often than it allows us to say yes. Because the way we're structured, at least, is that the most any customer can give us is $149 a month, period. Our prices range from $12 a month to $149 a month. In Microsoft's situation, or an Adobe situation, or any enterprise software industry, or any enterprise software leader, they price based on the number of seats. So one client they might spend $50,000 a year or $500,000 a year on their software. And so they become beholden to these individual customers. They say, this guy's giving us a lot of money, we have to make this guy happy. And this other guy's giving us a lot of money, we got to make this guy happy. We don't have to do that. We have our customer base spread across a wide variety of people who can only pay us $149 a month.
But I got to tell you, this feature creep problem isn't just for enterprise. I agree with everything you just said. The customers that, and I'm not trying to demonize Microsoft, you could say it about Adobe, you could say it about SAP, you could say it about a lot of companies. Microsoft's a little unusual because it's trying to sell to the average consumer as well as to the IT department of GM. And the only customer they really listen to is the IT department at GM. Right. That's the customer they listen to. But let's take Quicken.
Sure.
Quicken has become a mess.
Absolutely.
A complete mess.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't sell to enterprise.
Right.
And nobody pays it $500,000
sure.
a year. It's feature creep. It's a self-selected set of enthusiasts who demanded more and more and more and more. And I hate to sound like the oldest guy in the room. I'm not, thank God. But I'm close. Thank you, Richard. But you know, Scott Cook, who founded Intuit, came to see me all by himself without even a PR guy about 15, 16 years ago. And his whole idea was exactly your mantra, simplicity. There were personal finance programs at the time. His whole idea was simplicity, and it's become, and the reason it's become this way is partly because they wanted to sell revs. But even if they were delivering off the web and updating it every 2 weeks, they have this constant pressure from people saying, I want internal rate of return on you know, municipal bonds and on a 62-day cycle, and they build it in.
The simple answer is you have to be a hard ass, and you have to say no. There have to be limits, and the real way to do this is to not try and make everyone happy. We like to think of ourselves as the enemies of mediocrity. And mediocrity is when you try and make everybody happy and everyone fits in the middle, and then no one's really very happy.
So does this mean you have to be Steve Jobs?
You do. You have to be Steve Jobs, and we like to act like Steve Jobs. We think Steve Jobs is, or I think Steve Jobs is maybe the best business mind in the past 50 years. He's smart because he says no a lot, and he knows, like we were talking about earlier, the most important things that they've done are the things they've said no to. And I believe that absolutely to a T. I think that's incredibly important.
He, in an interview at my conference a couple of years ago, he said exactly that. He said, I'm prouder of the things we haven't done than the things we have done. Here's a great example. How many, I don't know, I see some Macs here, so there obviously are some people familiar with it. One of their great strengths is a set of products called iLife, which comes on every Mac. It's not part of the operating system, but it's on there. And I've said in my columns, and I'll say it here because it's true, it's a better set of applications for multimedia than you can buy on Windows from anyone, but it just comes on the computer. And a lot of it is about not putting in features, just making it simple enough to work. And they just brought on a new version, and one of the key programs in there, which is called iMovie, which is a video editor, they completely ripped it apart and took out features and made it look unlike other video editors. So instead of a timeline where you put in, you know, your clips and your frames, and another track for audio, which is the way everyone's high-end video editing software, including Apple's, works for pros, they decided that people weren't using it because it was too complicated for them. So now you just drag things into a big well and kind of mash them up, and you can get a movie very quickly, but it doesn't have all the, and the fans of the thing went crazy. Right. They were vilified all over the web for doing this. And, you know, the jury's still out, we'll see. Their compromise was to, when you installed it, still leave the old version on your computer if you cared about it. But Jobs stood up and said, look, we just decided too few people were using it, and so we just made it simple.
Absolutely.
But Jobs is a dictator. I mean, I can't think of a $25 billion company where the CEO reads the most routine press releases and edits them. I mean, you don't want to work for the guy, right? I mean, picks the translucency of the glass in the Apple store over here at Providence Place, you know. This guy's the CEO, and he's making these very detailed
And I
decisions.
love it. I think it's unbelievably fantastic. I think that.
Okay,
but let me clarify. Okay.
We're here discussing how businesses
let me clarify
can
that.
improve the way they run. Is
Sure.
that something everybody in the room should try to replicate?
I think
everybody should be a czar like that.
Well, I think people should have opinions, and we need more opinionated companies. There are very few companies, Apple's one of them, and I hope we're one of them too, that have opinions. And we believe that this is a good way of doing things, and there's other ways of doing things too, but we believe in our way of doing things. And if you believe in our way of doing things, you're going to love our products. And if you don't, that's okay too. There are plenty of other products out there for you.
Google's kind of like that too. I've gotten mad at them for a few things.
Yeah.
I personally hate 6 things about Gmail. I just don't like Gmail. I don't think all email is best read in conversations. There's a number of things that I don't like about it.
Right.
I go there. I was just there a few weeks ago, and we had a big kind of fight about Gmail with the Gmail team. They're sort of like Steve Jobs. I happen to agree with Steve more than I agree with the Gmail team, but they have the same attitude.
I mean, I like to think of it in terms of Italian restaurants. Okay, so you go to any city, and there's a lot of Italian restaurants. And there's certain Italian restaurants you like better than others, and you're going to frequent those Italian restaurants. They all might have penne arrabbiata, but you might like one person's penne arrabbiata better. And so that's what we try and do. We try and build software that's the penne arrabbiata that we like and that our customers like, and we cater to those people. And the idea is that if you try and make everyone happy, like I said earlier, you're going to end up with mediocrity, you're going to end up with crap, and you're going to end up with feature bloat and nastiness. And so we'd rather say, if you don't believe in what we believe in, then you're probably better off with a different product. But if you believe in what we believe in, you're going to have an incredible experience with our products. So that's the sort of thing we try and focus on. And Apple's the same way.
So how much time do I have left? About 3. Let's spend that 3 minutes talking about why open source is a failure. And here's what I mean.
Yep.
Here's what I mean. It's not a failure in the IT department of big corporations.
Exactly.
Where people from Mars run those RT departments, and the same people from the same planet write the open source software. That's fine.
Yeah.
There is one huge open source success called Firefox, which is the only open source program I routinely recommend to my readers.
Yep.
But as big a success as it is, it still has, what, 15% of the browser market, something like
Sure.
that. My theory is open source is a failure because they can't stop adding features, and they can't start making it simple because they're geeks themselves, and they don't associate enough with regular people. Is that wrong or right? No, I'm really serious. They would not know. I mean, this is a gross generalization, of course, but a lot of the people that write open source software would not know a normal non-techie consumer from a bag of Cheetos.
Absolutely. So open source.
Is that right or wrong?
I think it's partially absolutely right, but I have some more to add to that. But initially, open source is great for infrastructure stuff, for server software, database software, and stuff like that, the techie stuff. It's miserable for consumer-facing products, and there's a couple reasons. One is that people keep adding stuff, of course. But the other thing, I think it's far more fundamental. It's the fact that the experience is not considered. The customer experience is not at the forefront of open source software. What's at the forefront of open source software is democratized software development. And if you're thinking about building a product and you're thinking about the software development side of it, you're going to miss the mark. If you're thinking about the customer experience side of it and the interface and the way things flow and the way things look and the way things work, you're going to end up with hopefully a great product. The way we build everything is from the interface first. We do the entire mostly the entire interface of our products first, and then we have the programmers hook the stuff up so it works. And we found that model to be great because you're in front of the customer experience almost 100% of the time. You're in front of the things that your customers see because your customers see the interface. That's what they use. That's what they think of software. They don't think of the code. They don't care about the tech. What they see is what the software is. Open source doesn't work like that. It's the other way around, where the developers build stuff, and then they hire, hopefully, which they usually don't even, but they'll bring a designer on to paint the walls at the end. And painting the walls at the end is not how you design something great. It's how you paint something, but that's not design. Design needs to be integrated from the absolute start of the project and all the way through the end, and open source doesn't have that. So that's fundamentally, I think, one of the main reasons. The other reason is it's too democratized. There's not a leader, generally. There's not a gatekeeper. There's just everyone can do kind of everything. Of course, there's some gatekeepers, but fundamentally, everyone's involved. When everyone's involved in anything, it sucks, let's face it. I mean, are we right? When everyone's involved in something, it's pretty terrible. You need a leader. You need someone who's going to make decisions and say yes or no, and hopefully no more often than yes. And I think that's how you end up with something great. But Firefox is an anomaly, absolutely.
Well, and the interesting thing is that Firefox has now been put into a profit-making company where people can make decisions.
Yes.
They decided that in order to grow it, it's not Mozilla.com, but .org, it's Mozilla.com.
Right.
They've spun it into something else, which is kind of interesting.
Absolutely.
So you could become a very unpopular guy because some of the things you're saying are a little bit. Not a little bit, a lot against this idea that the crowd can decide everything.
I don't think the crowd should decide hardly anything, frankly. I really don't. I think the crowd can make some decent decisions, but for the most part, I think leaders make great decisions. And groups don't really make great decisions when it comes to like saying yes or no about something. They might move in one direction, but they're generally not as opinionated, I think, as they should be. So my belief, and a lot of people do hate us, and a lot of people do love us, and that's where I want to be. That's where Apple is too. A lot of people hate Apple, a lot of people love Apple. You have to have opinions that people care about. And if no one cares about you, then no one loves you or no one hates you. And I'd rather be hated and loved than neither. So that's absolutely where we stand. I definitely think it's important for companies to have opinions. There's not enough opinions in open source. And fundamentally, people need to say no more. They need to say no to new stuff and say, maybe, but no is even better.
Well, thanks.
Thank you very much. It's good to meet you. Thank you.